White Rose, June 9th, 1928. It was a bright and sunny day in Manhattan. Joseph Drake and his wife Rebecca and daughter Jane had just come back from breakfast in the city. Today really is a beautiful day, Joseph exclaimed as the sun poured into their small but sturdy home. Rebecca walks over and opens a window to look out at the sun hitting the tall, arrogant buildings around them. She hears the birds chirping and people talking on the street below. "Daddy," said Jane, "can we go down to the boardwalk and watch the birds?" "Of course we can, love," replied Joseph. He knew it was her favorite thing to do. He looked over to his wife and they just took a second to smile at each other over the great life they had built. About that time, as if it was almost set on a timer, the telephone rings and a solemn look falls over the previously happy family. Joseph Drake was one of Manhattan's best detectives, and there's only one reason he would be called on a Saturday. He was getting called in. Joseph walked into the dimly lit room they called a police station. As he walked in, he was greeted by everyone he passed like they were longtime friends. But the fact is, he never really talked to them at all. Joseph walked all the way back to the end of the station and into Chief Johnson's office, which was small and crude, but enough to get the job done. "Drake," said Chief Johnson, "what can I do for you?" "I was hoping you could tell me, Chief," Jake questioned. "You're the one that called me in on a Saturday." "I didn't call you in," said the chief with a confused look on his face. "Nobody called you in as far as I know. If you're all caught up on your paperwork, you may go home and be with your family." Chief Johnson said this with a smile as Drake turned around and exited the office, feeling confused. Drake walks out of the station and back down the street thinking about who could have called him and why. Joseph walks with a purpose back home to see his family as quickly as he can. He rounds the corner next to Hill's building and sees two men run out of the building and into the street. Drake thought he recognized one of the men from a gang, but he quickly shook his suspicions. Drake walked up the stairs and into the hallway where his home was. He noticed that the lock to his door had been broken. His heart started to race now. He ran through the door and into his home. He immediately heard screaming coming from the closet. He walked over, opened the door, and saw his wife tied to a chair with tape around her mouth. Drake looks at her in horror. He takes the tape off her mouth. "Where's Jane?" cries Rebecca. "Where's Jane?" Rebecca says over and over again. Drake could say nothing. All he could do was cry and hug his wife. He unties her from the chair, and together as they walk out of the closet and around the corner into the kitchen, they see Jane laying on the floor, dead, with a white rose next to her and a note. Both Joseph and Rebecca fall to the floor next to Jane, crying over her dead body. Joseph, in his grief, looks over at the white rose and the note. Immediately, he knows the gang he has been tracking for 3 years now. He had just recently locked up one of the gang's members, and now this was the consequence of it. They had come after his family. 1 year later. Today marked 1 year since Jane Drake had been murdered by the White Rose Gang, and Joseph had not stopped tracking down his daughter's killer. The image of the two men running out of the building was burned into his eyes. Drake was close behind them. He knew it, and so did they. Drake was waiting in an alley on the streets of Manhattan. He was waiting for the right person at the right time. Drake had his hat pulled down and was wearing a long overcoat and a suit. He was smoking a cigarette. About that time, two men came around the corner, and Drake didn't even have to raise his head. He knew it was them. Before the two men could get close to him, Drake looked up, pulled out his holstered gun, pointed it at the two men. They looked in horror, knowing it was him. "Do you remember the name Jane Drake?" shouted Joseph. "The little girl you murdered 1 year ago." The two men froze. They didn't even breathe. Joseph held the gun steadily at the two men. He felt he was there for hours, but it had only been 30 seconds. Drake wanted to pull the trigger so badly. As he was about to gun them down, he remembered what his dad had once said to him. "Two wrongs don't make a right, so don't stoop to their level." As Drake remembered this, He yelled out to the two men, "Put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest."